and also thank you for coming out to commemorate Black History Month and to look through the eyes of 3 Black women who are doing work in the Seattle area and trying to move the ball forward and continue to achieve and enjoy the successes that come from diversity and inclusion. So tonight I have asked 2 fantastic, stellar women to join me. Andra has agreed to join me and was put in my view at the MLK March this year. And she is just a shining star. And then Tana Yasu, who is a friend of mine who the past 4 years, we've done a domestic violence awareness event for the city. She's the chair of the Seattle Women's Commission. And I'm going to actually let them introduce themselves and give you a little bit of the meat that makes both of them just exquisite women and people that we should be proud of to be leaders in our community. So with that, Tana, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, and then Andra.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Good evening and good to see everyone here. Thank you so much for the honor of being invited to come and speak to the National Organization of Women in Black History Month, my absolute favorite month. This is like my Black Christmas for 28 days. Okay, so I'm Tana Yasu, and actually I'm co-chair now. We have another person that stepped up to be a chair with me. We usually have 3 to 4 co-chairs, and I was just the chair for a minute. It felt good to have that seat to myself, but now I am actually sharing it with someone else, and it's not horrible. She's coming in and helping out, doing a lot of work. So the commissions, we are volunteers. The commissioners are volunteers of the Seattle Office of Civil Rights, and the Women's Commission. What we are, I consider us as, we are the conduits or connectors for the community to the offices of the mayor and city council. We advise, what we do is advise the mayor and city council on matters that impact the people or women who live in this city. So we may do research and analysis, or just, connect with different organizations like Ways Forward or different type of organizations, and help give them voice to city council and the mayor. So the last great thing we did was the report on homelessness, and that really did a lot for the city. People are still, well, things changed since the pandemic, but that had done a lot and did a lot to change housing issues people were having with big money corporations, just really doing the bad things with housing. So anyway, that's me, Tana Yasu, Seattle Women's Commission, she, her, and now I will pass it off to Andra.
Thanks, Tana.
Thank you, Tana. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight, sharing your space and your time with us. Again, Andra Kranzler, she, her pronouns. We didn't do an acknowledgement, but on Indigenous land, so just want to acknowledge that. I went to Renton High School, and I was part of the Black Student Union, and they mobilized us on an I-200 and to fight for affirmative action, and they educated us and the mentors and the Black leadership that was spending time at Renton High School, and they planted a seed in me. I went to Highline College at community college, and then Professor Jones, one of my first, I was like my first real African American history class, I think, really like stopped me out, saw me in a room and said, you should think about going on to a 4-year university. And then I wanted to think about community because I just didn't understand. I just was like, how does a society create homelessness? Like, what is that? I was really grappling with that. And that was a question that I kept having. And so urban and regional planning found me. And a long story short is housing kind of has been my guide. Black women and Black men have been really like found me in a room and said, I see you, and helped like lead my way. And as a result, I've been able to, I call myself the community lawyer. I try to be in rooms. I try to pay attention to what's happening, and then I try to use all of my resource to try to be part of that microphone or be part of telling my own story. And so through community economic development advocacy, I use storytelling to address issues of white supremacy, economic, social, housing, and justice. Um, I say that one day I'll dream a job that I'm like waking people up and making them laugh on the way to work. But right now, my neighbors need to be housed. Um, and so I really love the Seattle Women's Commission. The Lost Home Report was a really powerful report that I, at the time, was an advocate at a place called the Fair Work Center. And I was running a small team of outreach educators going into community talking about labor standards and labor rights. And we had a small team, and so I actually had to go in and I didn't have to, but I got to go do a regular workshop with youth care baristas. And I always, every cohort, I did twice a month for almost 2 years. And so it's a new cohort every time I would go in, and I would talk about the Lost Home Report, and I would talk about the value of a barista in the day. And this was pre-pandemic, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but and anyway, just always wanting to like be authentically and genuinely trying to like have conversation and community about with each other about what's happening, because I think it's through these types of dialogues that change actually occurs. And I'm really excited to be here. I hope that I in my day job, I'm a directing attorney at this place called the Tenant Law Center. So I have a small team of attorneys and paralegals that I oversee that do eviction defense. So if you call the Tenant Law Center, you're going to get one of my attorneys or advocates on the phone, and we partner right now with the Tenants Union Housing Justice Project. So there's like a one number now in King County where people can call. And I would just like to say, like when we talk about human trafficking and we talk about domestic violence, the house is a lot of the time where people are seeking a safe place. And if the home is not a safe place, then we can't actually like have a safe community, because then people are unsafe outside and they're not safe. And so we need our houses, we need people to have housing, and we need our housing to be safe.
Excellent. Well, I do want to just really quick say I'm Mary Williams. I'm from Seattle. I'm a Seattle girl, proud of being from Seattle. And lately it feels like I'm in the minority a lot, but but anyway, in my day job, I'm a drug and alcohol treatment counselor at Rest, Real Escape from the Sex Trade. So I do help men and women get into treatment and to access treatment and to talk about harm reduction if they're not ready to go to treatment. And also, for family members who don't know what to do about their loved one. I do want to stop and do a land acknowledgement and also light a candle just to remember all the people who may be close by suffering from drugs and alcohol. We know that thousands are out there with those types of challenges. So just to remember, and I'm sure all of us, probably know of someone or have a family member that may be affected by drugs and alcohol or mental health. And so Ashe, just want to think about that. And then Lisa, can you do a land acknowledgement? I think that's important to prioritize.
Sure. So I'm Lisa Weber, and I am from the Samish Nation, which is up in the San Juan Island area of this community. And I would like to acknowledge that we are on the land of the Duwamish people, also of the Muckleshoot and Suquamish. They all found this area part of their historical territory. And I always like to point out that unfortunately, the Duwamish are still not recognized as their own nation by the federal government. And we lift our hands up to all of the people in this community that realize that it's about our community and helping each other out, and respecting our environment and trying to leave things better than when we came. And so thank you all for being here tonight.
Thank you, Lisa. So with that, let's go ahead and start our panel. We're actually just right on time. I'm going to briefly share, and then I'm going to invite each of the other two guests to share about the current work they're doing. And then we'll have time for some questions from the audience. Dennis, if you could just put up my handout with the blue coloring to it. I've been working really hard this year on legislation and policy, and many of you on the exec board have heard about what I've been working on. I'm part of a group called Ways Forward. And just briefly, we have three main things that we're trying to accomplish with our legislation, which is HB 1089, and it has moved into the next phase. I think it's the House. It moved through the House and it's in the next phase. So Tuesday, it'll be reviewed again, and hopefully move on. So the three main things that we're trying to do is establish a statewide network for folks who are trying to exit the sex industry or sex trafficking. And that's just because there's a huge amount of moving between cities and moving across borders that occurs in the sex industry. And so we want to know much more about where those sites that could be supportive are across the state, and also partner with other nearby states and localities. The second thing is to prioritize the services for the most vulnerable. So that would be people of color, Indigenous folks, LGBTQIA plus, and also localities that are underserved. So again, King County, you know, we have quite a lot of services over here, but east of the mountains, not as much. So we want to make sure that, you know, that it's equitably, you know, that services are able to be equitably accessed across the state, and that we're able to also transport folks if they need to get out of the area that they're in, you know, due to safety concerns. And then the third thing is that we want to have survivor-led services, so that, you know, when decisions are being made, that survivors are at the table, you know, and helping to drive some of the policy and decision-making around those types of changes. So thank you for that, Dennis. Appreciate you. There's one more piece to it that is really important that we're trying to document, which is my second handout, which if you could put up the second one really quick. We want a special research emphasis to be placed on Black women and girls. So I come to you tonight as a person who is, you know, part of the 7% of African Americans that call Washington State home. There's a lot of money being made in the sex industry, including labor trafficking. I heard a number today that was like $130 billion annually is made on the sex industry, including labor trafficking. And I just heard of a case down in Oregon where people were being kidnapped and made to work on pot farms. And it was a very reputable news agency that was reporting this. Anyway, so we're trying to get more research about current statistics. So as you see on here, 44% of child sex trafficking victims in King County are Black girls. So oftentimes we're introduced to this type of work when we're very young. Most people enter sex work at a young age, or were groomed or coerced into sex work. And then unfortunately, 80% of sex buyers are white. So there's a great disproportionality there, and we want to just study it more. We want to get more up-to-date numbers. There hasn't been a lot of data collected. If any of you have connections to research entities, colleges, that would be very helpful, because we're trying to, we've been trying to work with the Tubman, I can't remember the full name, Tubman Foundation. Anyway, it's a local medical and mental health facility. And we've been trying to get a researcher to partner with us to get up-to-date data. But if any of you have connections, please speak with me after the meeting, because we're looking for a researcher to take this on. Thank you, Dennis. So again, I just come to you tonight as a person who is a survivor of the sex industry. I kind of coined the term the sexual industrial complex, because to me, it is such a pervasive, it's like an industry, you know, it's a huge industry, and it connects to so many different types of entertainment and labor. And yeah, it's just huge, and a lot of money, there's a lot of money to be made. And when things like our bill come up, there's a lot of money that, you know, can be generated towards pushing back against these types of things. And I just want to say that, you know, to me, it's just another huge machine. You know, I'm reminding you that I'm a survivor, that I have made it out. It's been almost 30 years, but I still really struggle with unpeeling the onion and really grappling with some of the things that happened to me as a younger woman. And again, as a proud Washingtonian and part of that 7% of African-American citizens, I'm particularly concerned about, you know, Black women and girls, and the over exotification of us, the commoditization of us, the connections back to slavery, and, you know, just the way that we're exoticized and, you know, commoditized for our figures, for our physique, and some of the things that make us beautiful, you know. Unfortunately, many of the people that I ran into when I was doing that type of work, you know, they were adjacent to some forms of crime and criminality. Some of them were my partners, some of them were my friends. And unfortunately, another piece of that was recruiting people to participate. And so a lot of that went on. I just want you to remember that we often adultify Black girls, actually Black girls and boys. You know, we sometimes treat folks like they're older than they actually are, and we don't protect Black and brown women in the same kind of way that we do some others. And then, you know, just there's a lot of aspects to that. You know, colorism is alive as well, you know, and again, like I was saying, it seems like there's thousands and thousands of images out there of Black and brown women, but there's never enough. There's always kind of a need for more in pornography and other ways that, again, those images are sold and traded. So just the exoticization of our features and our skin tones, and that, remember that 80% of sex buyers are white, and that 98% of trafficking victims are female. So there's still great disparity there as far as, you know, even beginning to focus on why there are so many purchasers, or why, you know, what ways we can deter folks from purchasing or wanting to buy someone for their time or companionship. And then just also remembering the connections to substance abuse and mental health. So I am a survivor of, well, I'm in recovery now, but I was using substances when I was in the sex industry. And that was part of the ways that I got ready to get out there and go get money. And I think that was a coping skill for me. So the statistics that I found are that 98% of us report using substances such as drugs or alcohol to cope with what we're doing or what we have done in the sex industry. And it just takes many, many years to unpeel the layers that go with that. So I'm proud to be able to say that I am a survivor, and I feel like I have survived, and that I'm now able to thrive and give back. And you know, there's still areas where I make sure that I have a very good system of support, but I also am very passionate about making sure that my support is there for other men and women who would like a way out. I don't have any judgment about if folks decide to do that type of work. And there is, you know, many people who feel like sex work is work and valid work. And I think that that's important to just make sure that it's safe. And if at any time that they are unsafe, that there are exit pathways to get out We deserve a way up and out when we're ready to get out, if we're ready to get out. And I hope that our electeds can see that and make a way for us to have multiple exits. So with that, I will go ahead and pass the mic. Like I said, I had done some really good work with Tana Yasu on Women's Commission issues. So we would love to hear an update about what's going on with you and what is the current, plan of action for the Women's Commission.
Yes, thank you. Well, actually, the commissions are currently, we are in Black History Month, and the four commissions of Seattle Office of Civil Rights and the Office of Refugee and Immigrations is in a different house. They're housed in the Immigrant and Refugee Commission is housed in the Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs. So 5 commissions, though: the Women's Commission, the Human Rights Commission, the LGBTQ Commission, and the Disability Commission, along with the Commission of Refugee and Immigrants, are having a Black History Month event in Seattle at City Hall on this Saturday. And something I wanted to point out, several people were like, well, how does this have to do with commission work? Black history is, so one of the commissioners, when we were in our meeting planning for this, another commissioner on the Disability Commission called out someone that I didn't even know. So many times in Black History Month, we bring up, Harriet Tubman, all of the usuals, Nat Turner, Marcus Garvey, of course, Ida B. Wells, all these wonderful things that did happen years and years ago. But we have new history being made, also history being made today. So she pointed out to me, she called out the name of, let me get this right, Aaron, I have notes here. There's the first Black transgender disabled model who is actually reshaping the fashion industry since 2018. And her name is Erin Phillip. So something I wrote that I would just like to read here. The 5 Commission Black History Month event is a collaborative effort of the Women's Disability, LGBTQ, Immigrant and Refugee, and Human Rights Commissions, sharing space and time with beloved community, celebrating and uplifting Black resistance, which is the national theme for Black History Month of 2023. An undying spirit that intersects all efforts of commission work. Historically, the voices of marginalized community members have been silenced by systemic white supremacy. To be ostracized inside of being marginalized is a double dose of suppression that must be a heavy burden on our most vulnerable. If the fashion industry can see the beauty beyond the stigmas, what will it take for the rest of the world to rise past the isms that hold us all captive to patriarchal suppression? To crush the already struggling is hardly any different than the knee on the neck crushing the life out of George Floyd for all the world to see. This great nation, built on the foundation of tyranny, no different than what we're witnessing in the Ukraine on the news of the day. A tyranny we claim to abhor. However, the same tyranny we serve to our own neighbors, struggling and dying in our own backyard. We add a layer of love. Love, true unadulterated love, is the only cure for this systemic illness. It is the work of the commissions to provide this cure, to speak to power for those who have no voice. So join us in unity, Saturday, September 25th, in resistance to tyranny in all shapes, forms, and influence. So again, this we're coming together as community to uplift Black History Month and showcase the intersections of Black history across commission work. And we do have sponsors. The Participatory Budgeting Project is our sponsor this year. They are a Black-led nonprofit that was brought in to help facilitate the Seattle new participatory budgeting process. I bet you can't say that 5 times fast, 3 times fast. So because of the uprisings and all the things that happened with George Floyd and the risings and all that, the city of Seattle has now allocated $27 million that's going to go back into the community. $27 million is a great start to address the harms caused by the city of Seattle spending in the past, which a lot more went to policing than housing. You know, wonder why we have that. Oh, the time, apologies. The doors of City Hall will open at 12 p.m. and we have we have a whole lot of things going on. I want to be able to tell you everything that's going on. From 12 to 7:30, things going on. So I just wanted to bring to attention, though, our sponsors was the Participatory Budgeting Project, and they're going to be there to help onboard people to their steering committee to help start to facilitate how we're going to allocate these funds into the 5 areas that the Black Brilliance Project report said is where the community. Mary was on, she was part of one of the researchers that helped with this study, and they created this report. Thank you so much, Mary, for all your hard work. So the Black Brilliance Project highlighted the areas through community that we want this money to go to: housing and space, mental health, youth, wellness, and economic development in Black and historically marginalized communities, BIPOC communities. So, so there's going to be a launch of that. They're going to, they're going to be there to talk about all that and onboard people and do samples of what this looks like, because it is so new to so many people. It's just a totally new concept. And so the doors open at 12, and we're going to start with that type of thing where we'll introduce all the commissions, introduce participatory budgeting, and then we're going to go into a film screening of an award-winning film by one of our local filmmakers named Dr. Gilda Shepard, and she made a film called Since I've Been Down. So this is going to be a multifaceted event. Rapid fire, kind of fast paced, because there's so much to try to pack into one day. But some of the highlights too, outside of what I've already said, is there's going to be, a free film, free childcare, free food, and it's a free event. So, but the only thing for childcare, if somebody needs childcare, we need you to go to our Eventbrite and reserve space for childcare. The tickets that we have there is just so that we can have a head count of how many children are coming, so we'll know what to tell the childcare provider, so they can know how much space they're going to need and be prepared. And I wish I would have thought of to put ages. So now it's just like, we're just taking all these children. So, but it's okay. Last count, it was like 40 people, 40 children. I'm like, oh gosh, it's going to be like romper room. But anyway, so then we're going to have a panel discussion after the film screening with the filmmaker, Dr. Gilda Shepard, the members of the Black Prisoners Caucus. Now, in the film, there are like 3 people that are actually not in prison anymore. They did the work and things, so they're out. So they will be able to talk to us about how their experience dealing with the prison industrial complex. So the film highlights the supposed war on drugs, which was actually in the 80s and 90s, it was more of a war on poverty or a war on Black and brown skin that, the justice system just used to just sweep up all of our youth and throw them in prison with these long sentences for things that, it was just a total thing. So, so they'll be there. And also on that panel is going to be Amijah Smith, who, I got 3 minutes. I don't want to take up too much time. Amijah Smith, she works with an organization called Kids Are Kids. Oh, the 3 strikes. Oh gosh, yes, the 3 strikes. So, yeah, so I think some of these people got, they worked through the system to get out of their sentences early. They would still be there. They went in as teenagers. They would have been coming out as like maybe 50 or 60-year-old men, right? And they were like under 18 when they got locked up. So just the total ridiculousness of that. Plus, Kids Are Kids is a grassroots organization, and Amijah Smith is going to be on that panel to speak to how children still today, as young as 8 years old, are being charged as adults. So her organization definitely is going to need some support and help put eyes on what's happening in these courtrooms. A lot of times these families, you know, they don't have money, they go into court, they can't afford a lawyer, they don't know the system. So community really needs to come and start to be involved with what's happening with these people and try to give them support to keep them, you know, out of the prison industrial complex. So then, I mean, and this is all just in the first couple hours of the day, right? So go grab yourself a snack, then come on back. Then we're going to hear from an organization called the Covenant. This Covenant is another Black-led grassroots organization that is basically like they have 17 principles that they're inviting the community to come and be ambassadors, hold up these principles as we lift the community and be more supportive to each other, and kind of do a reverse engineer what was engineered into us all these years. We want to reverse engineer that and make it's not cool to be hard and, you know, all of that. It's more cool to uphold some great principles and standards. So we're bringing folks into that. Then there is Tyrese, who has come in. His organization, his business is called Titanium, but he does, you know, life coaching, and he's going to come and talk about the healing and how we can have healing in our community and within ourselves, and, you know, flourish with that positivity. So he'll be talking about healing and mental health at about 3:20. Let me stop right here. If you go to Eventbrite and search 5 Commissions event, our event will come up, and then the full agenda is there as well for more information. So then that's going to happen. And then we're going to go into a economic discussion with the Brothers of Build 206. They do a lot in the community with helping young entrepreneurs, or they have grant programs. They have a lot of awesome programming. So they're gonna be on the panel for our economic development or our economic discussion. And then also Jebediah Gardner, he's a developer. So we're gonna have a developer, members of Bill 206, Pat Butler Lathan. She's good. Her business is getting people out of debt, credit repair, and stuff like that. So we're gonna have to talk about money. Everybody likes to talk about money, but nobody likes to talk about money, right? So we're gonna go on and have that conversation and have resources people could plug into in different areas of that. And then we're gonna have a discussion with our Black LGBTQIA community. Isaiah Anderson and Deontay Damper of Bill 206. They're going to facilitate that conversation. You might know Dominique Stevens, Jalen Smith, and Andrew Ashiofu. They're going to be on the panel to talk about intersections, inclusion, and impact, a Black LGBTQIA panel discussion. And then for the grand finale, we're going to have a Black drag show. And so many people ask, what is the significance of, you know, this drag show being part, you know, trust me, I get pushed back all the time on all my antics. What I like to do is when I help to facilitate events or bring the people together, I like to try to have different things. Somebody might come for the movie and stay for a discussion, or just go to get something to eat, or someone might come like, hey, free childcare, and I can just run around City Hall for a few hours and don't have to worry about kids. They might just come, you know, we don't know what everyone might come for, but they're definitely going to get more than they expected. So anyway, we're doing this drag show. The art of drag is Black history. Some people don't know. It goes back. I even had done some research lately. First, I thought it was just from the Harlem Renaissance. Then when I was digging a little more deep for this year, because we did this last year as well, but for this year, I realized there is a Black drag queen that was in the late 1800s, still before the Emancipation Proclamation. And then he got emancipated, well, this day I don't know. I'm just gonna say what the history says. He was a drag queen. But he was emancipated, and then he got into trouble because, of course, back then it was so-called House of Ill Repute or whatever. And so he was fighting the courts, and the same struggle we're just really still fighting today is all I'm trying to say. So this is historic. Coach T of Cutting Up Entertainment, which we all know, he's an awesome award-winning choreographer. They do Bubble and Brown. He choreographs for Bubble and Brown Sugar. He's got the dance studio. He does just all this great things. And I just love to be able to honor him and honor the art and give them this platform, because historically, I just had it in my bones that I wanted to see our LGBTQIA plus members, historic leaders. Bayard Rustin, he planned the March on Washington, but he couldn't come to the front because of his lifestyle. So after all the work, come on, who doesn't know about the March on Washington? All these names. James Baldwin as well. He was uninvited from the March on Washington, because they felt like he was a little too fiery for the situation. So, and his lifestyle too. So things like that. So Alice Walker, and just some of the people that we don't hear about. We hear about, like I said, Harriet Tubman and all the usuals, which is not taken away from them. But I want to be able to, I say the theme for this year is Black resistance, but my theme for this year, probably every year, is Black love is Black resistance. And I just want to be able to show love from the prisoners to mental health to LGBTQ. We all need to just solve this. These problems will not be solved until we really are using love as the solution. So like I said, free childcare, food. We got Deaf Chef Jermaine Miller is curating our food for the day. That's going to be free. And we're also going to have a DJ on site. So there's going to be some music going on in the outer room. We're going to be in the inner room, not the upper room, but the inner room, where all the conversations and serious stuff's happening. But there's going to be music. So some people might want to just, hey, I just want to sit here and listen to some cuts and sit at City Hall and relax. So Seattle City Hall, 600 4th Avenue, downtown Seattle. Come on in use the 5th Avenue entrance though. I'm trying to work on having the 4th entrance open, but on the weekends it is closed. So you might have to, use that 5th Avenue entrance. But from 12 to 7:30, it's just going to be a full day full of fabulous activities and opportunities to connect. We're going to have tablers there, nonprofit tablers, POCAN, Washington Therapy Fund Foundation, a vegan chef is going to be there. So there will be vegan opportunities, and she's actually a nonprofit. So she's kind of mixing hers up with, I'm doing tabling, but I'm also bringing some vittles. We are very excited about doing that. Sierra Sisters is going to be there. They do breast cancer research. People don't know when African Americans get breast cancer, sometimes it's so much worse and more devastating, and the science isn't behind that, so many times. So Sierra Sisters does a lot of work in the Black community to help African American women and men, because men can get breast cancer too. So cancer victims with help and support. So that is pretty much what's going on for this month. And then, of course, the Seattle Women's Commission, our work plan for 2023 is to work in the areas of affordable housing, affordable childcare, and missing and murdered Indigenous women. And so you will be hearing and seeing a lot more from us as the year progresses. In those areas, especially, I've been floating to them that, we need to do a new housing report, because the pandemic just blew all that pretty much out of the water. It was like, oh, now we got to start over. So I'd love for us to be able to get another housing report going. And also the missing and murdered Indigenous women. I've been hearing in the community how, even though the governor has set up an alert system for the missing and murdered Indigenous folks, sometimes when it happens and they try to have the authorities to set I see a head nodding, like the governor said, this is what we have for this situation. but the system is not complying, basically. So we have to get loud with that and get that situated. So missing and murdered Indigenous women events are coming up in May. Another head nod. Yeah, but I'm not gonna wait till May. I'm ready to go. After Black History Month's over, it's like, okay, now we got to get to this missing and murdered Indigenous women. I'd love for us to even work on it's been a couple years, so now we got to do double duty. I'd love to see something on policing, housing, and missing and murdered Indigenous women for sure. So please, anybody, my email, I'll put it in the chat, reach out. Mary, I really would like to see you at more of our meetings with your information and your updates so that we can keep the community
I'll do
aware
my
of
best.
this sex trafficking. Yeah, well, as many as you can, or send someone else. We'll figure it out. So
Right
I think that
on.
pretty much covers it. Does anyone have any questions?
Well, I
Any
want to give
questions
Andra
for
a
me?
chance, and then if somebody has questions,
Oh.
actually, can you guys put your questions in the chat,
Okay.
and then we'll probably only have time for one or two. But Andra, if you could connect, she told me a lot about her work in housing as well. So take it away, Andra.
Yeah, so it's so great to just hear the connection between the work that Mary and Tana and I do, and kind of over the arc of like time. When I was a landlord for the Low Income Housing Institute, and I managed 3 buildings in the South Lake Union neighborhood, the Julie, the Lakeview, and the Jensen Apartments, and sex trafficking and just the war on drugs was really ripe in that neighborhood, and so we were doing a lot of work to try to keep our I was trying to keep my residents housed and safe and supported, and trying to wrap services around them. And in that time I had case management services in my buildings, and so it was just really a powerful learning moment for me. We also, like, if there were just really rampant drugs in the building, I could call a team called the ACT team, and what they would do is they could come in and just remove the drugs from the unit. There was a real bad black tar heroin scene, and people were getting high in the stairwell, and so the fire department was coming in regularly, busting in the door, and so we needed to stop replacing the door, but we didn't want anyone to end up unhoused. And I was just empowered in that time to, like, I think at the time no one was calling it harm reduction or any of that, but that's what I would call it now. I was just trying to keep people housed. I knew enough, and I'd been in enough households where income income ranged from no income to lots of income, and I knew drug addiction, mental health, and sadness were things that disrupted everybody's household. So I think I had a really great learning opportunity to see kind of like how sound, at the time it was Seattle Mental Health, could come in and like help me like stabilize like someone in their house, like help them like get the services, so like whatever was happening inside their home wasn't like being disruptive to the neighbors, because that's really the issue, was like if something was happening, then, and it was causing a disruption to a neighbor, then I would have to come in and be this like landlord. And so it was always about trying to figure out like, well, how can I just like how do we get to more yeses? And so I think leading from a space of abundance and like humanity and compassion. um and so uh, that was my first job as a landlord, was out of planning school, was in that downtown South Lake Union core. And I would go on to become a housing advocate for people living homeless. And I worked for the Church Council of Greater Seattle, and harm reduction, and just like, I mean, I literally like sprained the muscle around my brain my very last client, moving like pacing. It was an incredible experience where low level sex activity was really necessary to meet basic needs. um, trauma from lots of loss and unaddressed addiction were causing this particular person to just spiral out, and was going to lose a lot of family, was losing her, on the verge of losing children. And so I just, I just said, like, look, like, until you can say what's going on, I can't really help. And if you don't pay your portion of the rent, like, I really can't help. I was like, I need you to talk to me. And we built some rapport, and for 6 months this person called me after they paid their rent, and they binged, and they were binging crack cocaine. And but they paid their bills, and they were communicating with their advocate. And after 6 months, we were able to, like, get them into her and the person and the child into treatment, and make safe arrangements for the older child. And happy story about after I would become a mother decades later, I would run into this person, and they would take the time to tell me their story, and they're no longer struggling in the pains of their addiction, and they're living a full life, a much fuller life. And I offer that because I think those are the things that I think guide my work. In my day right now, I have kind of a few commitments for things that I'm working on. Housing advocacy has always been, like, at the center. Again, I just think that I'm nothing if my neighbor is not housed. Like, I don't know how I am whole. If a Black woman is struggling, and I don't see my connection to her, then that's part of the problem, because our struggles are intertwined. So the housing advocacy at the Tana Law Center, hopefully, if you've ever utilized the service or you're utilizing it of the last year and a half, hopefully you'll find us that we're helping renters take one step to staying housed. It's an interactive process to exercise rights under the Residential Landlord-Tenant Act. First step is pro se self-help. You have to initiate. So we're trying to empower and encourage people to lean into the conflict. It's okay, conflict happens, we can resolve it, and we're not less than because conflict happens. When the renter has no longer been able to advocate for themselves, they've exhausted all of their pro se health effort, and it's just not moving the needle for them, then we're able to represent. And then we spend, I have 2 attorneys in 3 different community meetings every month, just supporting outreach and education and providing in real time answers to people's real questions around their rights to stay housed. We're building partnership with renters and advocates to improve enforcement under the RLTA. And right now that looks like us trying to fight really hard for rent stabilization bills. That I'm not really sure what's happened after the last couple of days, but I know there was a House Bill 1388 and House Bill 1389 that were really, really important bills. SB 5435 was going to stop rent gouging and stabilize rent increases, but I got an email saying that actually did not make it out of committee. I serve on the Lauren Miller Bar Association as their vice president of events. And what that looks like for me right now is I'm planning the Philip L. Burton Scholarship Dinner, where we help Black lawyers or Black law students who've graduated from law school and are preparing to take the bar. We pay for their 3 months financial stipend so that they can do nothing but study for the bar. And so in that way, we're trying to provide a resource that's really lacking. It's great. Yay, we get to college, and we incur a whole bunch of debt, and it can be really hard to separate the debt from, like, the professional goals. And so the Philip L. Burton Scholarship Dinner helps law students focus on just their getting that bar exam done, and not having to worry about how they're going to meet their rent. It's probably not by accident that I've been invited by the LMBA to represent them at the Seattle African American Reparations Committee. This committee is formed of over 41 community-based organizations in the city have said that they wanted reparations, and 12 people from different organizations, including Kevin Allen, who's joining us as a guest this evening, are sitting on this committee. And we're asking the city of Seattle to review its own history in order to ascertain the extent to which economic and other forms of systemic discrimination against African American descendants of those enslaved in the United States has taken place within the city of Seattle. We're hopeful, Mayor Harrell, that he will develop a powerful committee to conduct a major study to catalog the most consistent harms resulting from the exclusion and systemic racism faced by African Americans and institutions that serve them, and come up with a plan that is meaningful reparations. And I will just say, as a member of that committee, it's really important that as we are planning to wind down some of what our budget has looked like because there's no money, this is the moment where we would start to think about reparations. Right now in the city of Seattle, a Black person has $42,500 in the median income, while a white person has a median income of $105,100. In 2019, the median household net worth for Black households in Seattle was $23,300, and for white households, it was $456,000. Reparations is a public safety requirement. It's a public health solution. It is the stabilization. It is the thing that keeps our men and women out of the criminal justice system. It keeps our babies at home safe and not being trafficked. It keeps our young women supported and valued and protected because they have a house, because they have a safe job, because they're treated fairly on their job. We, as a nation, said, great. If a person does not commit a crime against the nation, they cannot be enslaved. But if they commit a crime against the nation, they can be imprisoned and their rights can be taken from them. And we have exerted and exhausted every resource available to man to implement the exception to the 13th Amendment. We have not spent even a 5% of the resources needed to implement and redress badges of slavery. Jamila Taylor is a new elected official, legislator for the state of Washington, and is moving a bill right now that would address it's House Bill 1474, companion bill, Senate Bill 5496, establishes a covenant of homeownership account and program to provide down payment and closing cost assistance to groups of people identified in a covenant homeownership program. This is one effort by our state legislators to try to move a form of reparations. Reparations is not one thing. Reparations is what we say it is. I think it's a moment where storytelling matters, and I think that we need to start to tell our story. I think we need to look to our left and our right, and we can talk to our Japanese American friends, and we can talk about what reparations has done for their community. And while our jurisprudence doesn't allow an apology, no court is ever going to order someone to say, I'm sorry. We acknowledge harm by damages, and damages are monetary. And the biggest thing that I think I've ever gotten to do in my entire life, and probably in my entire career, is I got to represent the Laura Miller Bar Association in 2020 in an amicus brief on a case called Henderson v. Thompson. Henderson v. Thompson is a case that was brought by, and Ms. Henderson is an African-American woman. She had Tourette's. She is a larger size woman, and she has a darker skin complexion. And Ms. Henderson was hit by Ms. Thompson. Ms. Thompson was driving 41 miles per hour. Ms. Thompson did not say that she did not hit Ms. Henderson, but Ms. Thompson refused to pay any personal injury damages to Ms. Henderson. Ms. Henderson had to sue Ms. Thompson for damages because the accident exacerbated her Tourette's. During the trial, Ms. Henderson paid for a woman attorney, had Black doctors, and had Black witness friends. Ms. Thompson's attorney used racial epithets to make Ms. Henderson, and racial tropes to make Ms. Henderson look like she was a liar, that she was sleeping with her doctor, and that she was just overall trying to get over on Ms. Thompson. The judge was very disrespectful to Ms. Sargent, and the plaintiff's counsel was also very inhumane. And in the end, the jury, while they found in favor of Ms. Henderson, the normal damages for someone experiencing what Ms. Henderson experienced would have had a settlement of around $350 million, I think it was. I may be off on that particular exact number. But what they ended up awarding her was $9,000. On October 24th, 2022, Justice Montoya Lewis probably wrote the most incredible opinion that I've ever seen come from a Supreme Court justice. And as my former boss said, it is the opinion of our lifetime. In that opinion, she said that Black and brown people have a right to a civil trial, free of implicit or explicit racism, and that cannot be targeted toward, if it's targeted toward legal counsel, defendants, plaintiffs, judges, witness, experts, it can be a reason for a new trial, and that Black people who are seeking damages should not be given nominal damages. And so I don't know the impact of Henderson v. Thompson beyond this moment, but I will say right now, lawyers all across the state of Washington are having deep dialogue around race. And when the national dialogue coming from DeSantis in Florida is, we do not talk about critical race theory, the entire Washington state jurisprudence has a keen eye on race and what it means and how it's impacting our society. And I think for that alone is powerful change. Our stories matter. And lastly, I spent a lot of my volunteer time helping individual workers experiencing issues at work resolve those issues through de-escalation and not litigation, helping coalitions address systemic injustice, help small Black and brown owned businesses adopt policies and business practices that are not rooted in furthering white supremacy culture. I've disclosed a lot about me. I normally don't usually tell all of the different things that I'm doing. It's a little odd to share all of it a little bit, but I did want to just give the opportunity to just say that I've had an opportunity. I've been looked to by community as someone who can do a good job, and I'm really grateful for those opportunities. And I would just say that, you know, I've never had a win that didn't have a whole lot of people leading in that win. And so we all have a special talent and we all have a special role. You don't have to say it a specific way, but you know it, and you can say it the way that you say it. And maybe the way that you say it is the way that we need to hear it. And maybe the way that I say it isn't the way. So don't be so hung up maybe on not saying it the right way, or thinking that you have to know have to have every fact at your disposal. Find your resources that you can rely on, that you can trust. Share those resources and encourage your friends to critically think about how we can create a society that is not this, that we can do better, if for the fact that we have everybody's history that came before us to learn from. And the mistakes that we're experiencing aren't so much different than those that came before us. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Oh my gosh, I told you guys, super duper rock stars. Did I not tell you guys? Oh my goodness. So I have been so thrilled and honored to be a part of this. Thank you, Now Seattle chapter, for hosting us. I know that you guys have some questions in the chat. I don't know if our guests have to hurry off and have other things to do, but thank you for listening. One of my biggest struggles is not always feeling heard as a Black woman. And so it's really nice to just have the floor and have a few minutes to talk. And I hope Andra and Tana felt the same way. Do you guys want to add anything, or do you want to attempt to answer the question? I seen a tiny house question.
So there is a question for Andra, and then there's a question for all of you so far in the chat.
Okay, well, I can stay. It's up to if you guys can stay a minute.
That would be great.
Okay.
Okay, Yvonne, why don't you ask your question first, and then we'll let Kevin ask his.
Okay, well,
His is
thank
more
you.
complicated.
So, Andrea, the reason I asked my question is my church, St. Juris in Madrona, has so far built 3 tiny houses, and we're about to build another. And it makes us feel really good to do this, but we want to, and they take it to a tiny house village, of course. And we're working with I've forgotten the name of the organization, but they are the ones that organize the building of these houses.
Yes.
Anyway, my concern is, and the reason I'm so enthusiastic is they can have, there are locked facilities for women, especially, and children, it's women and women with children for safety. But are they really helping? Is there really a path to permanent housing? Is the tiny house village model really working for people, and people are getting permanent housing as a result?
That is a really weighted question. And I have a lot of thoughts and opinions. And I served on the Lehigh board when they were really trying to uplift tiny homes, and as a working at the Tenant Law Center, Catholic Community Services of Western Washington has pilot shelters, and
Yeah.
I built Habitat for Humanity homes in Wapato, Washington with St. Therese.
Oh,
uh,
really?
for 2 years while I was in high school and 1 year after
Oh,
high school.
fabulous.
I think that they're shelter. They are
Mhm.
temporary. I
Mhm.
think that we could do more things to make them more permanent. I think this idea that we're just going to build brand new building housing and that every person that's in those tiny shelters is going to be able to get in those housing. I think that that's not true. I know that's illusory. That's not true. Our screening criteria that we allow landlords to create is a form of, I see it as a form of badge of slavery, and I invite other people to criticize that statement, but this is what I think. I think the day that we feel comfortable with that Black man who's struggling, who's the most vulnerable, very broken, being housed and having resources, really, not on condition that he's going to just magically turn into somebody who doesn't have schizophrenia. Because we don't ever talk about the number of Black men in their early 20s diagnosed with schizophrenia who look presenting like they have no problems,
Mhm.
but they're not mentally, emotionally stable. Okay? Those are the men and the women that are going into those shelters. I think that people need a right to need a right to stay someplace long term. I think people need a right to ownership. I'll just tell you what I put in social media about the tiny homes. It's great. This idea that you're just going to be able to rotate people in and out. And the fact that it's become kind of the default mental health space.
Mhm.
It's like the people who are really just struggling with just the norms of this society are being placed in these places because there's nowhere else for them to go other than under the bridge.
Yeah.
And I don't think that that's okay. I think we are only as strong as our most traumatized neighbor. And when that neighbor is severely traumatized, it doesn't matter if 100 of us are not traumatized. 99 of us will be impacted by that one person's trauma. If we beat him, then that means if any of the 99 get beaten or her get beaten, then that's the solution to trauma. I don't think that's where we're coming from.
No.
I'll just say that Northwest Justice Project right now has a lawsuit against the Low Income Housing Institute regarding its due process and just snapping locks and like kicking people out when they get violent.
Oh.
And I will say the flip side is like, you show up and you're just like making $25 an hour and you're responsible
It's not
for
even,
the whole tiny home village.
Mhm.
And, you know,
They have to
you're getting
pay.
flat, you're getting beat up or threatened to be beat up. I mean, it's a very volatile situation. So I actually think we need like more people at the table. I think we need some social and psychoanalysts, like health analysts. I think we need mental health. I think there needs to be a deeper dialogue about what what are we really doing here? Because you could make those tiny homes into ADA accessible units. You could put
Mhm.
actually build them up a little bit more and put like a place where people could cook, and that you could create, a bathroom using composting toilets, and people could own them with their social security disability insurance, and they could be paying $200 a month in their mortgage versus in that, and they could be there on land that is transit oriented development land that is not necessarily going to be bought by the average private person to build on. It's, not necessarily the fanciest land. And you could then, when they get ready to say, I want to go into this other space, or I'm ready to do these other things, they could then sell that, and then they would have a meaningful deposit, and you will have like help them like get back into like the
right.
capitalism side of our society. But right now it's hodgepodgey, and I think it is a feel-good moment. I think it is providing a roof. I don't think it's a long-term stable solution.
Well, it was my understanding that it was temporary, that the villages, the houses go to these villages that have resources, 24-hour-a-day resources that allow them to, clean themselves, their clothes, store their food, a safe place for their belongings. That was the feel good for me.
Yeah.
Well, I will
Can you get
encourage.
into housing? Can you get in? Can you meet that landlord screening criteria? Can you show you have 4 times the monthly rent or 3 times, that's what it
Wow.
is now. Can you pay the move-in fees? Even with all of those shrinkages on like in caps and stuff, the move-in fees are really ridiculous.
Mhm.
And are you going to bide the tide between, you know, um, getting onto services and the loss of services by getting other services?
But
And so
doesn't
I guess what it
Section 8
is, it's a
handle?
very short-term solution that
Mhm.
doesn't, that requires a lot of extra work to really make sure that somebody can get into the housing. I mean, right now we're fighting for housing and essential needs, which is a big financial source of income that is used by folks who are in the tiny village to get into permanent housing, especially if they're a disabled adult.
Uh-huh.
And
Mm.
so
Oh, wow.
that right now we're advocating at the state legislature, and I don't have that House bill or that Senate bill in front of us, but that people get 1 year guaranteed services, because right now it's a 90-day rotation.
90 days.
So it's kind of like
It's like a shelter.
Mm,
you have these
mm.
like jump starts, half starts, and nothing is really like, and I get it. Mayor Harrell's on the TV, yesterday saying like, Mark Jones with the Regional Housing Authority is asking for $8.8 million or something.
Right,
And he's like, I need something between that and this. And I think that
right.
he's right.
Well, I guess I
Wow.
will say I need to go over to the tiny house village and volunteer some counseling for an hour or two on the weekends. But I will encourage you guys to visit your local tiny house village. I have 3 of them here by me. I'm in
Mhm.
Skyway, and I often do take donations over there. And the last time I went, I actually had a client with me, and because she was interested in trying to get in there, and we had a tour. And the guy was wonderful. And they did have an ADA bathroom. I will say that they did have a shared cooking facility, and they did have a shared like community room that had clothing and some
Mhm.
toys and stuff for the kids and stuff like that. And I was impressed by the community feel, but I definitely would volunteer some time to go over there and see if anybody is affected by any of the things that I'm trained in. So that's really good. And I have worked at Lehigh facilities. I worked at Gossip Place and
Mhm.
McDermott Place, and it was barely 25 an hour when I was doing that. So I don't think that they make quite that much. So those are very tough jobs, those frontline jobs. Okay, I see we have France has her hand up, but Kevin had a question. So let's try and get those 2 in.
So Kevin first and then France.
Yes.
Okay, well, thanks. I'm so glad to be here. My question is kind of like a question and a flower for our panelists, and I want to shout out to them because we talk about intersectionality and multitasking, like most Black women work and act on more than one thing at a time. And I know that all these sisters, they may do one thing, but they're doing multiple things, whether they're doing advocacy or they're engaged in the political process, or they're doing arts work or culture, as well as things, not to mention family, kids, themselves, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there because I want to acknowledge that.
That's
And we know that Black women, they've always been that way. We had a conversation at Build, which is Black United in Labor Leadership, and the Brothers Believe discussion says, whenever you talk about civil rights, all that, even Black Panthers, Black women were the ones who were managing that, and if Black women were leading, we'd probably be in a better place. But that's another discussion. But my question is, how can we please discuss how we can get more folks in order so that everybody won't feel overloaded because of the overflowing need Also, how can men support your capacity to lead and be successful, more fruitful, and moving things forward? That's I could go on and on, but I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, I'll pick this one up and give Andra a break because that was a lot. Thank you so much for everything you do. We're definitely going to be connecting. Okay, so the how to get more folks engaged in order that everyone can feel overloaded because of overflowing need. I was thinking about that just earlier today. Just, I have my little random thoughts. And my best formula for a lot of the community events I produce or whatever I'm producing, I know that people are, it's just overwhelmed. We've been overwhelmed. We was already overwhelmed before the pandemic, and now post-pandemic life, we're like, it's just like, this is just life. It's just always going to be too much and too many things. So generally what I'll do is say I'll formulate the plan. What I tend to do is work, I envision what I want to see at the end, and then I work backward from that. So what is this, like say this great event that's coming up? What did I visualize it to be? And so then I kind of reverse engineered it. And then it was like, okay, well, who's going to be helping? And I reached out to the other commissioners first. And then I started reaching out to, and then I really only try to give people can you just do this one thing? I don't ask people to come, okay, can you do this, that, and da. No, everybody's is too much. Their life's already too full, but they can probably handle one other thing, especially if it's for community, if that's their heart and they really want to do it, but they might not know how to plug in and they might not have a capacity and they feel intimidated to plug in because they feel like, oh, well, if I try to go help, they're going to want me to do all this stuff. It's like, no, you're never going to have to do all the stuff. I'm going to be like, I was like, Deontay, I want to have this conversation with the community and the LGBTQ. Can you just, and I don't know the people to go reach out to. He knows the people to go reach out to. He knows what that should look like because that's his actual lifestyle, right? So can you do that? And so I just like to build the platforms and figure out what, it's like a mosaic. What do you want in this mosaic? Who's going to be the best part to get this facet of that situation done? Deontay Damper's great for that. Jermaine, Deaf Chef, he's food. Okay, Deaf Chef, can you come organize the food? So he's there, he's doing that. That's what he loves, that's his lane. Put people, don't get people out of their lane or their comfort zone too much. So that is pretty much my formula for when I call for community to come help. I give them the platform and the place to do what they do best. I can't do it all. I'm not going to try to do it all, but I know he can do that. Come on, do that. And a lot of times I get grants too, so I can also offer pay, especially in this day and age. Please don't ask people to come and do stuff and not pay them. A lot of times they will come out of just love for community. That's great. That's fabulous. I love to know that they will come. But if I can raise some funds to be able to just pay them, even the volunteers that come and help out on Saturday, hey, give me your W-9. We're going to track your hours. You're going to get $20 an hour for helping out. I never call people to do anything for free. That's inhumane in this day and age to do that. If you want their time, you definitely need to compensate them, especially if we're going to talk about reparations and decolonization and, we're not doing the slavery thing no more. Don't do that. Our time is worth, it's valuable. So at least, be ready to do that. Sometimes it could even be a gift card. Sometimes, some gas, it doesn't even have to always be a lot. So anyway, and then the other thing, how can men support your capacity to lead and be successful, more fruitful, and moving things forward? I always love to have, I try to balance things with the male-female energy, or I love for men can actually join the Seattle Women's Commission. you can apply and become a Seattle Women's Commissioner. Just, you know, the Women's Commission does not mean you have to be a cis woman, even, you know, to be a Women's Commissioner. So just ask. I mean, if you want to be involved, some situations might need to be strictly maybe, you know, women or women or people who identify themselves as women. Some situations, because you know, if it's an abuse thing or, you know, certain things that could trigger whatever. But yeah, just I would say reach out maybe to some of these organizations that seem to be mostly women or women-led or for women, but you want to help and you want to be that male energy that's supportive, because sometimes maybe we're having an event and we might need some security or something to help walk us out to our cars, or, you know, just get creative and like, well, what do you want to do to help? Okay, now find somebody, like it's almost that reverse engineer thing again. Okay, I want to help. Okay, well, who needs the type of help you want to give? Go find that person, and they'll be more than happy to accept that, and they might even have a budget to pay you for your time for coming to help. And don't be ashamed to get paid. You know, coming out of enslavement and all the things we've been going through, Black folks, everybody, Indigenous, anybody, white, black, whatever, your time is valuable. We have to understand that. To me, well, I mean, it's a fact that slavery has changed, and the new commodity, like, well, there is the sex trafficking and the whole illegal thing, but just in the, you know, in the world of this working thing, time, you know, that's been a problem. Why do we have such a mass housing issue? People aren't getting paid a livable wage. So you definitely, every little bit counts. So I hope that helps. You should come apply to be on the Women's Commission. That would be great. We'd love to have you.
Yes, Kevin needs more. More on his plate. Yeah, France.
So I just wanted to mention that the National Organization for Women also has men in it. Thank you, Dennis. And gosh, Andra, what you said was so sobering to me. Our church has done 3 tiny houses, and I was a little uncomfortable knowing that the kit alone was several thousands of dollars, and didn't that seem to be money that could go directly to people in a different way? And at least 60 to 80 hours of volunteer labor and all the tools. And, you know, when you said that they have a finite amount of time that they're there, that just broke my heart, because I know, you know, that it takes years to get into public housing, so that won't work at all. But we, Meaningful Movies Kirkland, did a documentary, a local filmmaker did, called Stories of Us, Camp Second Chance. And she did that several years ago. But in that film, we saw several people who graduated from that to housing outside the tiny houses. And there were several people that were so dependable in the tiny house village that they graduated to supervise other tiny house projects. So, you know, the feeling in the film was that this was a really hopeful, upbeat thing. And, you know, bottom line for me, thinking about women is, you know, thank God there's a place where you can lock your door. You know, thank God there's a place where you can have your stuff be safe. And especially if you're working poor, in the film, they had people who were taking all their stuff to work because they didn't have any safe place until they got into a tiny house. So it's a very, very complicated issue.
It's very complicated. I just am, you know, I just think that we're not having a full dialogue. And I think
like,
that if you're investing in these tiny homes and you say, oh, this is a temporary thing and this is it, I think it needs to be more human centered and being like, what is this that we need?
right.
I think that we have, you know, when I managed the Julie apartments, they were like larger studios in an older building that had, had reinforced masonry. So they had like, this is an older building, but it was able to stand. And so they had done those investments. And every unit in that building had a number I could call if something happened, if that person hit a moment in their life where things were not going as positive for them.
Right.
I had the Jensen, that was SRO. So they were these very large apartments, but each unit didn't have a bathroom in it. So there was like 2 units had to share a bathroom. And the people that lived there had VA pensions and like, really low incomes, but like had different challenges than maybe the folks that lived at the Julie. Um, they all had like community ownership, like they met weekly and they told me what was happening in the building and they cleaned and they did all of these things. And so I just think that like at 2023, if we can't be centered around the human and we can't create multiple different types of human housing structures that are really thoughtful, that anybody would be like, you know what, if fall on hard times, I can do that. I could live there. That is not, I don't know. There's a lot of resources here. And we give money to really incredible things that maybe get utilized once, for tourism. I guess if I just think that the tiny home model is a good model for getting people out of the bridge, under the bridge and into something. I also think it's really powerful because like maybe they need to be some bigger ones where Black women who are the most likely to be unhoused with their children in King County are not separated from their little Black boys
Mm.
because they're going into shelters where they're in cot beds and they can't lock the door and they have suffered from DV and the neighbor next to them is also suffering from DV and the impacts of what that trauma was and settling, and both of their crying is really not conducive to anybody's healing in that exact moment because they need a wall with a little bit of padding and some privacy.
Yeah.
And so for the tiny shelter model in terms of its ability to provide that privacy, absolutely. The opportunity that it has for creating more stability for folks and helping people. What if it took somebody who'd been chronically homeless and really struggling 5 years to really settle in and figure out a new plan? What does that look like? Do we have the compassion and can we find steady resources to really just say this is our 5-year plan here?
Yeah.
Because some people are 30 to 90 days and that's great, and get them in and get them out and there's not a problem. But I think for the folks that are not the 30, 90-day stay or even, a 6-month stay, I think, and sometimes when people finally find a place to be safe and then you tell them that it's not permanent, that instability also can create that same trauma. And if you don't look at like what that child rearing was like and where those bouts of instability happen and kind of what that trajectory looked like, your harm can I don't know. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, trauma is like the bane of our existence. I will say too that like we have we have 2 houses actually at Rest, and it's the same idea. It's like folks can stay there for a year. After they come out of our shelter, they can, work to stay there a year. But then as the year gets closer, if they don't find housing, it's like people start to really like completely melt down too. And like their mental health stuff gets way worse. So it's a much more holistic wraparound type problem. But I thought they could stay in those tiny homes longer than that or until they
Yeah.
secure housing. That's unfortunate. I need to learn more.
I don't know what their timeline is. I know that they don't have a right to stay for a long, like if they make a rule break, there's a right, they could be out that very
Yeah.
night, maybe they can have a right to come back in some instances, but but then it is triggered, right? Like if you get that certain thing and there is like this place, you might be pushed to go into that more quote unquote stable housing because that case manager has decided that that's what stability looks like best for you. So self-determination is also another place where you see people push back and resist the resources because again, it's not centered. They might really need 2.5 years.
Yeah, way more services too.
Or an offer of housing that isn't so abrupt where it's a natural, like this is okay, we've been applying for housing and now there's housing and now it's come up and then we get to make a plan, versus it's like in my chaotic moment, you had me fill out a whole bunch of forms. I wasn't really present with all of that happening. Now here I am at the moment, and now you're telling me this community that I've built, the safety that I have, this routine that I'm now committed to is now going to be disrupted again because now it's time. The trigger has said, okay, this is your time to go. And I guess I'm just a lawyer in this space, and actually I'm really not even as connected as I used to be in terms of the day-to-day, like grinding it out with the case manager and the client and trying to like just I'm kind of at this next layer of saying, okay, how are we resolving? Because even though I'm just giving kind of anecdotal hypothetical examples, there are actual people and situations that are framing this, and I'm trying to say it in this more broader way, but it's not a theme that I'm not seeing regular. It's not for the people who can fall down and like they can dust their knees off and they can get back up, great. If you fell down and now you need 90 days non-weight bearing, and now you need full wheelchair, and now you can't even hold yourself up long enough to make a cup of tea. And I think we have the model that's for the person who's able to dust themselves off. We haven't built that model for that person who, when they fell down, life is, when they get back up, it's like, looks like a 180 difference. And that's the missing piece in our society. And I will say renters don't have a right to be housed. So if you are a renter and you haven't made a phone call this year, you should call your elected, somebody elected, and tell them what's going on in your renter world and be part of that solution. I think we all can be part of the solution. And I just would like to say to Kevin, I think the way that we need to try to organize folks is to really try to help people see where they're personally connected to the thing, and then really encourage folks to make that phone call, do the next thing, right?
Well, it is 8:30, y'all. So I feel like we should stop here. It sounds like we need a housing town hall forum or something.
Yes.
But
Thank
I
you,
honor
Andrea,
my
for your
sisters.
work.
Thank you.
Let's do it. The 5 commissions, I'm gonna have y'all come to the 5 commissions meeting. This 5 commissions, doing this collaborative thing, we're gonna move forward. We're gonna keep doing that because we're stronger. We're stronger together when all of the 5 commissions are working together instead of just these onesies.
Yes.
I got you.
Brilliant.
Even National Organization of Women, come. You got my email. Hit me up. Let's do this thing.
Let's do it.
The power of coalition. Yeah.
Coalition. Mobilize.
It was a wonderful night. Thank you.
Thank
all.
you.
Thank you.
Everyone
Thank you.
for
Thank
being
you.
patient and listening. Thank you for making us feel heard.
Yes. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Inspiring us. Let's put it that way.
That's right.